Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury.
Electrifying.
Yes, guys, and welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you are all good. I hope you're having a very happy, splendid day, because I know I certainly am after the feast, the absolute feast of the Hate Watch, the Arsenal win on Saturday. It was just a brilliant weekend of football. And we've still got no Alex. Alex should be back next week, though. But for the meantime, I'm with the man, the myth, the legend, the genius, that is, George.
Hello, good sir. How are you?
Really good, really good. No, I'm absolutely buzzing. I feel euphoria. And actually, that can project me to the word of the day, actually, because I've got a nice one today. And
Okay.
I don't think it's an unfamiliar one, although it might be to some people. It's exultant.
Exultant. I have actually heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you use it for me in a sentence?
Absolutely. So, in the G-Van gaff yesterday, when Harry Maguire rose like a salmon and went bang, the atmosphere, the scream that I let off was of an exultant nature. And if you don't know what exultant means, it basically means feeling very happy, especially when somebody else is suffering. And in the context of the suffering, it is Liverpool with 4 defeats in a row. So yeah, I'm absolutely gassed by it. And no, there's a lot to get our teeth stuck into. The final housekeeping bit to do. It's from MJ again, our producer, our editor. I told you about this last week. I'm going to tell you again. There was an improvement, but I'm going to have to keep pointing for you guys who have not clicked that notification button. What are you doing? Click the button, because you'll then get the latest update, the immediate update of when a video is released, whether it's main podcast, whether it's scouted clips, whether it's TCP live, etc., everything. So please do press that notification button. But enough of all that, let's get straight into it. Title race, George. Talk to me.
Mate, it's significant, you know. I'm just going to do this. You kind of said it earlier in terms of there being 4 consecutive bounced losses for Liverpool, which are just very strange because I don't think they've done that since something like 2014 when I last looked. I made a post on X. The last time that Liverpool have actually had 4 consecutive losses on the bounce was back in 2014. So it's pretty significant for them as a club in general. And I did want to talk about not just that, but for Arsenal, in the context, mate, of us gaining 3 consecutive game week points on Liverpool, it's significant. This is what has lost us the title in previous campaigns. 3 or 4 clustered results in a row, and they do decide titles. And it's significant for me because it's not just paired with this clustered result point. It's paired with us overcoming Newcastle, West Ham, and Fulham. Like, the manner in which we've got those results aren't just impressive about gaining the physical points. It's who we've done it against and how we've just gotten there. And of course, we're here to talk about Fulham in terms of the overall match. But I just wanted to really highlight that point and ask for yourself. Like, I think that there's a lot of times we look for momentum in title swings. And, you know, I could probably point and you could probably do the same. You love to do it in each kind of title race where you look at specific moments. Yeah. However, I do think that 3 to 4 game clustered results has been the detriment to Arsenal Football Club being able to become favorites of a title race in general. And, you know, it's typically happened in the first half of a season. I think in general, Arsenal have been quite good, except for that bloody Rob Holding injury. But we end seasons quite well, typically. And, you know, that's never been a problem. It's been leading up to the point of that kind of final run in January, February, where we actually pull ourselves together 9 times out of 10, unless we have a major injury to the starting 11, which should not be an excuse at this point with the type of squad we have. But generally speaking, we have lost games in the first half of the season that have made us suffer and want to be perfect towards the end in the back half of the season. And that's the kind of pressure that I think is the difference between being proactive and reactive in a title race. And everything about our performances seem to be proactive just in general. And it's brilliant to see. Like, do you over-index the manner of the wins in the last 3 to 4 as well as the point gain? Because it really is starting to look to line up, mate. Like, I mean, part of the reason that you referenced the tiers is I'm looking online. Everybody's realizing it's not just Arsenal fans that we're looking back on. This is significant 4 on a bounce, 1 after an international break in which they had 2 weeks to prepare to know exactly what type of game that they're doing here. And, it was a really poor game against United. It should have been 3-1. In terms of a score line. Like Liverpool, it wasn't just an unlucky loss. They actually deserved to lose in that game. And that's kind of worrying for a team that's looking on building momentum, for a squad that's spent nearly £400 million, and for a team looking for unity. It's all the recipe for disaster as far as when you're looking over. I know we say look at your own lawn, but I'm looking at the lawn and it's looking unkept. It's looking a little dry, the neighbor's lawn. And I'm looking, mine's looking pretty good right now. But yeah, I wanted to know, do you over-index the number of losses on the bounce and the number of wins we've been able to make against the type of opposition that we've had?
It's a combination of it all. I think you spoke about it brilliantly, where Arsenal fans, it doesn't matter what type of Arsenal fan you are in terms of how you see the game, whether you're a tactico or whether you're a casual, it doesn't matter. But what everybody can agree on is the fact that Arsenal, in order for them to be able to pull away and to be the protagonists, they need to latch on when the opportunity strikes. And they've had 3 defeats, against Palace, Chelsea, and most recently against Man United. That is the perfect opportunity in which you can then pull away. And that's exactly what we've done in this moment of time. Now, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's going to be turbulence along our journey and along Liverpool's journey as well this season. But I don't know if you recall when we did the main pod a few weeks ago, and it was after Liverpool's first defeat and it was against Palace. Mm-hmm. Both of us said at that time in which, we've got through that tricky period against Man City, against Newcastle, in a good position. And you look at our next set of fixtures, and we obviously are very well aware the fact that these fixtures in the past have been our kryptonite. When you talk about Newcastle, Fulham, West Ham, last season we lost to Newcastle, we lost to West Ham, we drew to Fulham, 1 out of 9 points. The season before that, again, losses to Newcastle, losses to West Ham, and a loss to Fulham as well, taking 0 points. So to get maximum is massive, but also it's the fact that we have capitalised in a period in which Liverpool are going through teething issues. Now, I think those teething issues are a lot more than just teething issues, but
I agree.
I do believe that Liverpool will get better. And this is why I feel like, when you can never, I would say, you can't win a title in this period of the season, right? But you can most certainly significantly dent the aspirations of your competitors. And that's what we're doing against Liverpool right now. And I said at the time in which Liverpool, in the next 5 games, and this was before they played Chelsea. Yeah. If we win our 5 games, and that remains to be seen. There's still a long way to go. We've still got to play Palace, Burnley, Sunderland, etc. Right? But if we win all our 5, I guarantee you that it will be a minimum of 5 points will be ahead of Liverpool because their games are tough. Now, I didn't think that they would lose all 3. I didn't think they'd lose to Chelsea and Man United, but I knew that they would. I had the feeling that they would drop points because for me, my whole point about Liverpool, mate, is, and I think we should probably touch a little bit on Man City as well, just to get them in the conversation. I've always thought of Liverpool in which forget about the overall issues that they have, in terms of Trent, etc. We've mentioned that many times. But when we looked at Liverpool this season in terms of scoring late goals consistently earlier on in the final 10 minutes to get the desired outcome, my feeling of that was they're overperforming in that regard. Yes, they are absolutely brilliant at being able to sustain pressure and put opposition under serious stress. But my feeling is that you can't consistently put yourself in a situation which you need a goal in the final 10 minutes. You're going to regress more towards the mean. And that's what's starting to happen. So I'm really ecstatic because we are doing our job and then we're watching what's happening at Liverpool and they're going through some problems and we're capitalising in this present moment of time.
Yeah, and let me give you some numbers as far as the context goes towards that title race. And, the one thing is that Arsenal have been criticised for not creating enough, generally speaking, and compared to their competitors. I think we all know that we're among, if not the best defence in the league. And, I think Newcastle typically battle us for some of those things, but generally speaking, Arsenal are the best out-of-possession team in the world. This is not something that Arsenal fans worry about. It was going into it, whether or not we're creative enough and accessing the middle with enough frequency that we're creating as much as our title rivals to max kind of the defensive stellar record. And, people had looked at that. And, right now we have the same XG4 in the league as Liverpool, which is 13.6, and our only 0.8 XG behind Manchester City at 14.4. Negligible. All three are basically creating at the same XG. However, we have far better goal differentials because of our defense in terms of that. So we all title rivals are, in essence, despite having quote unquote problems, creating at the same level. And it's our defensive ability as a team that has led us to have such a great start. I think the thing is, when I look at it as well, there's been some numbers that look at Arsenal being on pace to track to Chelsea's 15 goal conceded record, which is absolutely insane to even be entertaining something like that, especially 20 years on. I hold back on that because even though we're tracking, we still have 80% of the season left. Like, it's insane to even talk about that in the context of it. However, I brought up those points about the creativity because that has been, for me, the biggest change in Arsenal over these last couple of games. Because I really want to get nitpicky in terms of what Arsenal's problems are, what Liverpool's problems are, and what City's problems are. And kind of ask you, why is it that Arsenal are solving it more than Manchester City and Liverpool? So to set the scene, I would say from a Liverpool perspective, one of the biggest frustrations is people are isolating their fullbacks. They don't have effective passers from deep to find their forwards with enough consistency at this point. You know, we talked about the impact of Trent, but I think for the most part, when I have a look, they're just not dominating their midfield games, Liverpool. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of space that's happening, and, you know, they are not effectively controlling their transitions. And, you know, a lot of it is going long, but they don't have the quality that they had with Trent. So those long moments about getting early into their forwards is not resulting in as many chances because the passes aren't clean. And, you know, they're also not passing through the middle of the park, and they're not controlling things through the middle of the park. So that's leading to some confusion beyond the chemistry aspect, which is a problem. It is something that I highlighted a little bit earlier in the summer, but that's Liverpool's problem. Then let's move to Manchester City, where Erling Haaland has nearly 85% of their goals and is an absolute robot and an outlier. However, City also have defensive issues, particularly off defending centrally and defending those defense transitions. And they're relying on Haaland as an outlier to really outscore them in matches. And their team in general aren't scoring. Now, I believe Arsenal with Trossard is something like the 5th different goal scorer in the league this season. And it's
10th
been
in all competitions.
There you go. 10th in all competitions. And I think that you're looking at a goal by committee. City have Haaland. And is that enough to kind of battle it out? I mean, from a contingency standpoint, you never know, but I always like saying if you have different goal scorers, you feel more at ease, you sleep better at night, because if you rely on one thing, one ace in the hole, you don't know, like, what's your backup plan? And they don't have people that are stepping up consistently. And we talked about Liverpool. So for me, and I wanted to ask you this before we get into the game against Fulham, what has changed from Arsenal this season? Because Arsenal have always been a team by committee. We have always put ourselves, whether it's defensive work rate, by the way, we defend as a team. But the committee aspect, the team aspect, prioritizing that has been Mikel's choice for many title races. This isn't new. Whereas I think City and Liverpool have always defended on individuals respectfully. I mean, you look at Liverpool, it was Virgil van Dijk, the Salahs, it was those individual performers being able to outperform the team's performance. I think City, if you really looked at it, it's odd. The last couple title races have been individual based, but as a whole, they were more team based in the Centurions, I would argue. They were just a brilliant team, top to bottom. Them at their best was a winning by committee. Do you feel that in order to win our title, it has to be on our terms under committee? Or do you feel it will get down to a point in which Bukayo Saka will have to be a Haaland and outgun people? Like, where do you stand on the best thought process behind it?
I mean, just to add to your point about Trossard being the 5th in the Premier League and me responding by saying it's 10th in all competitions, it's not, it's 10th in the Premier League. I just did it in my head. Yeah. It's 10 different goal scorers in the Premier League already, and we're eight games in, which is crazy. But I think Arsenal's best version of Mikel, whether it's 22-23 or 23-24, goals are spread across the team, right? We have always been a team in which we're not relying on a specific individual. Yes, we're relying on individuals like Bukayo Saka to give us the magic, for sure. But in terms of when you're comparing it relative to what Erling Haaland is doing right now for Man City, it's completely different, right? What he's doing for Man City is he is dragging them through games. I watched that game against Everton. Trust me, there was a couple of really big moments that Beto had before City managed to get their goal. And fair play to them, they're ruthless. They have been ruthless. We saw it obviously at the Emirates. They had one moment, bang, and they take the opportunity and they go the goal ahead. So I do think in terms of like output wise, I don't think we will ever be in a situation which Bukayo Saka is going to be rivaling Erling Haaland in terms of goals. But I think Bukayo Saka's influence on the team, which we saw against Fulham, in which he didn't contribute a goal contribution, although that penalty absolutely should have been a penalty. His impact on the team is profound. But I do think that this is an Arsenal team in which the best version that I've seen under Mikel, and it's going to be this season as well, in which the goals are spread more across the pitch. I don't see it as being one guy getting, 60% of the goals and then 40% is spread across the remainder of the team. I think it's going to be like a lot more spread. And I think we as a team, I prefer that personally. I don't. I mean, I'm not going to complain, obviously, if we had an outlier and we go on to win the Premier League consistently. But if you'd ask me for my preference, I do like the goals spread out. But I do think it's interesting in terms of Man City, kind of, for a lot of people, they are going under the radar in terms of what they're doing in the background. Not a lot of attention to them. I do think a lot of it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't take City for... we certainly should take them seriously, but I think a lot of it is down to what's happened in the past against Man City and, a Pep Guardiola team and how we've been burned. Because I just don't think City will consistently maintain the pace that will allow them to win the league.
What makes you have that doubt? Because I know that's something... Look, I can only speak for me. Like, I've always told people, I think you got to watch City because they have almost fallen so much. They got disrespected. And then it's a kind of case of, okay, but what is it about them that has such vulnerability that people do dismiss them as seriously? Like, in your opinion, do you think it's just performances, or is there a squad quality difference here?
I think said it in previous main pods where the appointment of Pep Linders makes complete sense in terms of what Manchester City need, but I just didn't see the recruitment match that players coming in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, the players who came in and the way City still do defend, and I look at some of the players at the back and the athletic incapabilities that some of them do have, I struggle to see how they're going to be able to sustain this level against a lot of teams who have that running power and who can break quickly. I was watching Forest against Chelsea at the weekend, and Forest could have been 2 or 3-0 up in the first half. And I'm looking at some of the talent that they have across their front line. It's really strong. And I'm looking at other teams and looking at the likes of Brighton, Bournemouth, Aston Villa. These are teams who have serious pace and power in their side across their front line. And I just feel like Man City are not going to be able to withstand that consistently. I think from an attacking perspective, I think City will get a lot better. I actually don't think it's just going to be Haaland on his own just doing everything.
Yeah, I think Doku will really perform.
Yeah, Doku's having a fantastic season. But I just feel those vulnerabilities are there. I think we can all agree on Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City. They all have their vulnerabilities and they all have areas of weakness. But I just feel like we are in a better position to mitigate our weaknesses. And I feel we're already doing that at a time in which, there's a lot of focus on Man City haven't clicked yet, Liverpool haven't clicked yet, Arsenal haven't clicked yet. We've had to go through a lot of change as well this season. We've had to suffer a lot of injuries, and we've mitigated it brilliantly because of our approach to the summer window. There should be that focus on us as well. So that's why I'm feeling really optimistic about the season.
I don't know how to put this into words, mate. And it's just because Fulham was exactly what I'm going to talk about. It is this case of... it's okay. Our first half wasn't brilliant against Fulham in terms of impact. And there was actually, I think Fulham did something incredibly smart, by the way. And I want to really praise Marco Silva, who for me has one of the best mid blocks in the world. And it's not about, necessarily having the talent just to sit in and defend. It's the way that they're able to actually back off. Like Fulham did this thing where Arsenal want people to press them so that we can bait, engage, and create space in the middle of the park, right? Now, Fulham did something really different. And the reason I'm picking up on this, by the way, is because Arne Slot had a really weird comment in his press conferences about people basically being able to make changes and how, Manchester United had employed Sesko and it was like a lot of teams have started to make changes against us. And I'm like, wait, are you complaining about people coaching now? Because this is a change that Marco Silva did. He asked them to step off. I think Arsenal have blitzed both West Ham and Newcastle because we've been able to get them to engage in the press. And we've just had a brilliant build-up this season, mate. Like, it's taken a different level for me. And our quality in the build-up in terms of being able to bait and engage opponents has actually been critical in us finding space in the middle of the park and us finding space in pockets. But Fulham didn't do that. They didn't bite. They sat off. And they sat off in this central kind of mid-block. And it was up to us to start mixing it up a bit through some of our long switches. Declan Rice, I think, there was a brilliant comp going about. But I haven't seen that Declan Rice since West Ham, if that makes sense. The way that he was spraying balls out wide and quick. And I just wanted to talk about the logic of why we did that against Fulham. So when you have a mid-block that is staying within the mid-block and you're asking for long switches, you're asking that block to drop off and then squeeze again. You're asking them to move. So you're pushing the line back with passing. Okay? That's just the very basic coaching terms for why we did that. The reason why I think that's important is because it took us 45 minutes to solve that issue. And then from there, when you look at kind of the XG of Arsenal and of the match, it's skyrocketed in the second half. Why do I say that's important? We have been incredibly proactive in this title race, where teams have actually tried to trip us up. And we've responded not in panic, but with a dominant way. And I wouldn't even say the first half was one where I was fearing being conceded on. It was just a case of, by the way, guys, we had a disallowed goal from Calafiori, which was brilliant. I mean, we'll get into the specifics, but the first half we didn't create a ton because of a very good coaching change to Marco Silva. The team switches, adapts to the change, executes. Whereas I feel that Liverpool, City, there's an air of being reactive to change. I look at title races in the past when Unai Emery would throw a kind of an issue at us with Villa. It would take us a long time to adapt to that change. West Ham, even Fulham of last year, they did the same tactic, but it didn't take us 90 minutes to change. And there is a different level of confidence I feel where I'm like, okay, I can see a problem happening. I'm confident in the second half, either through changes or whatnot, this team can be malleable to adapt and it won't be sucked into playing the same way. And I don't know if I feel that same confidence with our title. Yes. And I don't know if our title rivals are like that. Did you feel similarly in terms of like your overall thoughts on the game between the first half and the second half, where, unless maybe I'm wrong, like, do you feel like the first half was a little bit more difficult in us learning how to bait and engage the Fulham line?
The key word for me is difficult. And by the way, firstly, I think, we talk a lot about the injuries that are endured, that we've had to suffer this season and also mainly last season, right? We spoke about that a lot because it was rightfully so for us to stress it. What I will say is Fulham, credit to them, because they had no Muniz, they had no Lukic, they had no Robinson. These are serious players that are massive for Fulham in terms of what they're trying to achieve. But in terms of their performance and how they play, there's still the identity, there's still that familiarity, and that's a sign of a very good coach. And to be fair to him, he's been there for a while, and he's drilled that team into an outfit in which you can see why we have had difficulty against them over the years. And I'm telling you now, a lot of other teams are going to struggle to take points off Fulham in the big games. They took points off Liverpool last season. They took 4 points off Liverpool last season, Fulham. So that's Fulham. In terms of the difficulties in the first half, I do agree. And for me, Mikel said it post-match. He mentioned how, we had to try a few different things, and he said credit to Marco Silva and how they set up, and then we found solutions. And for me, what happened, and it falls into what you're talking about in terms of Fulham, they have their block. It's this 4-4-2 block that's very familiar in terms of the Premier League, etc. And they had Jimenez and Josh King up top, Sanderberg and Tom Kearney in the midfield pivot. And we respond, obviously, when teams are setting up it that way, we respond with a pivot. And then we have our back three nominally. And what was happening in the first half is, as usual, Jimenez and Josh King, they're marking our pivot. So they're trying to stop them from getting on the ball inside the block. What would also happen is in the first half, we responded by dropping Zubimendi out of the block into right centre-back. And then push Timber further forward, situationally. But every time Zubimendi dropped out of the block, Jimenez would follow, because they recognise Zubimendi is the key in terms of facilitating and dictating our attacks and the tempo in which he instills in this Arsenal team. So he was very good in that role, and that's why I felt our access to the right-hand side wasn't as smooth in the first half. What we did in the second half, and it goes back to your point about Declan Rice, and I've written a piece on my Substack and I've deleted it accidentally, so I'm going to have to sort that out after this. But basically, I said in the second half, the Declan Rice tweak of having him at left centre-back, wide left centre-back, and effectively playing in the West Ham role in which we associate with Rice in terms of dropping there and allowing the fullbacks to bomb forward, and he'd play massive switches to Kufal and Bowen would come inside. What this did is when Declan Rice dropped out, they weren't as aggressive in terms of stopping him from dropping out, nor were they as consistent relative to Zubimendi in the first half. And then Zubimendi would move closer to Rice, he'd move laterally, drifting horizontally to drag his marker further in, and then that meant Saliba could operate as the wide right centre-back, and he'd have space to carry and play passes and find Saka more. Why? Because, like I said, Jurrien Timber's joining high, he's pushing forward, which is dragging Alex Iwobi more inside, the Fulham winger, in terms of how they set up. And by dragging Iwobi inside, it then pushes Eze further infield to be in that central space near zone 14. You've got Calafiori or Leandro Trossard, it doesn't matter who it was. One of those guys was in the left half space, so we're overloading their midfield pivot. They're two in the middle of the park in Kearney and Sander Berg. And you've got Ryan Sessegnon now against Saka in clear 1v1 opportunities. You can't mark everybody. So Saliba was the free man now, and he could play these passes into Saka, but then also you had the long raking diags that Declan Rice was hitting to Saka, one of which was key in terms of isolating Saka against Kevin, who then, in my opinion, does foul Saka in the box, in which it should have been a penalty. So in the first half, I felt our access to the right-hand side was not as smooth, even though we still created moments. We absolutely did. But in the second half, I just felt that tweak of Declan Rice moving into left centre-back, wide of the three, as opposed to Zubimendi, it really gave us a different edge to the game, and I felt our access was better.
And I think that flexibility to the pivot being just as influential from different areas is something we didn't have last season.
Yes.
It was a singular pivot in which we would use that one pivot player to move to affect play. Declan would be somebody that would shuttle the ball up and be a little bit ahead of the ball, but really it would be Thomas Partey that we would hope kind of in the hole to basically be that person to switch intentions.
Yeah.
Now, if we've got Zubimendi out there and we want to switch and we want to make use of maybe Declan Rice's long passes, who does it from the left, Zubimendi can push up into the right half space and be an option centrally, which is not what we had last year. That almost like you go high, I go low symmetry,
like a pendulum,
was not. Yes, it wasn't as available to us last year, where really it was just one player and we would just have two people kind of pushing on, and it meant that it was predictable. Fulham didn't know whether to stick or twist, whether it was Declan Rice kind of coming deep or whatnot, because Declan Rice's long ball switching, mate, was phenomenal. I remember me and you talking about that one Athletic article that he did, and it was a case of like
I'm so happy you brought right. I'm sorry to put in here, right, George, and I don't want to go too tactical, obviously, but we need to talk about this because I remember at that time, I remember in which the discourse from that was, see, Mikel Arteta doesn't like switches. When people didn't read the article, Declan Rice said he doesn't like switches if it doesn't give our team an advantage. If it gives us an advantage, by all means, play the switch. And he did it. And that's it was brilliant. Declan Rice, I think, completed every single switch of play in that game. It was like, that was muscle memory to Declan Rice at West Ham. Dropping out, recognizing that he's got the space to hit these switches. And when you're playing against a team that's really compact centrally, there's always going to be space out wide. So you can always hit that. And I think Fulham, the reason why Liverpool, although not last season, but in previous seasons, have had success against teams like Fulham, is because they've had, as you alluded to, deep passes outside the block who can hit these long raking balls in behind, constantly challenging the last line. Yeah, that's what Declan Rice offered us. That's what also Jurrien Timber did in the first half for the switch to Trossard in the build-up to the Calafiori goal. That's what Jurrien Timber did for Gyökeres a couple of times to get the ball over the top and into promising areas. And these are good moments that we had. So the flexibility, the chameleon nature of Arsenal, I think is something that is really important to note. And yeah, that's all I've got to say on it, really.
Yeah, it's crucial to us solving these problems because last year I don't think we had it. And I hope people can kind of follow the logic that we're talking about here because it's crucial to our ability to make this a sustainable pattern of play. And it's why we've been able to turn around Newcastle, West Ham, and Fulham.
Yeah.
3 incredibly big bogey teams. And you know what, mate? Crystal Palace would round out the 4th that I'm concerned about. Ironically, the Burnley and the Sunderlands are things where I felt like, okay, those deep low blocks, maybe it's taken us a while to score, but I am confident in Arsenal breaking down a block, unless it's a Madrid or an Atlanta who are more similar to Newcastle, West Ham, and Fulham in the way that they defend, right? Like when it's somebody that we've really penned in, I'm actually kind of confident that Arsenal can find solutions, and I'm even more confident when we've got a Kai Havertz switch that's available on the horizon for those type of games, which is brilliant, who apparently could be on his way back.
Absolutely.
However, it's that debate, isn't it, about Arsenal being that much different this season, being able for us to switch things and make and manufacture our own space, as opposed to asking the opposition to give it to us. And that, I guess that to me, to tie that off in a bow, is why I felt like this proactivity point of Arsenal in the title race. When I'm looking at other people, I'm looking at Liverpool struggling against United to win second balls. Holy crap, can I just repeat that sentence? Liverpool struggling against second balls against United. Casemiro in the pivot with Bruno.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, I don't think people are understanding that point, but it's pertinent. Because Liverpool couldn't find a solution despite being able to change just as much as Arsenal could. Arsenal had an issue with Fulham. We did. And it took us a while. However, we found that solution. And it really is that kind of ability to dominate that I think we're asking a bit more aggression in terms of our title race. And that was brilliant. But there's one player that I want to give you the floor on. Because I have my own player that I want to talk about. But I want to give you Bukayo Saka, mate. He was sensational. I have made a tweet, and I've said this many times on the pod. We are watching the best right winger that has ever played for Arsenal Football Club. In my opinion, one who will graduate as the best Hale End graduate and a literal living legend at the club. There's been a lot of crap said about Bukayo Saka, and I'm going to go that hard, about how his injuries have affected his way of playing. I looked at a player who was on a freaking mission, and we have both said it. Last year, he was operating at a different level prior to injury. Talk to me about Bukayo Saka, because I don't want to overlook it. He's just so brilliant. We're always like 9, 10 out of 10. He's our talisman. He's this, he's that. He leads the team. But mate, this is one of his best performances that I've seen actually in a while, like in months. This was bad. This was scary. Saka was on a mission. And, you know, the way that he was moving, even when he drifted out to the left, that little move that he makes to cut inside, it was just him in full flow. There's been this thing where he's put on muscle and he can't be as agile as what he was when he first came into the team. I think hogwash. The efficiency I'm seeing from this kid is out of this world, and the intelligence that this kid has on display. Everyone says it. He just does the basics well consistently. I go, why are you doing that as a dig against him? There are 99% of footballers that have the exact same opportunity to do that. And I'm sorry that Bukayo Saka is just going to make the right decision every time and you're going to be upset about it. But that is one of the most intelligent footballers on the planet. And he's operating at a prime level. Like, what do you make of Bukayo? What do you make of the special sauce? Do you feel that he's on a different mission lately? Like, I don't know when it was, but there was a time last year to me where I was just like, I think something switched. Like, he's become much better than what he was when he came in. Like, what do you think that change is? And do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean with Saka, you know, we mentioned it last season in terms of he had that Midas touch. Every single game he was producing magic. And for me, mate, I don't think much has changed from last season, because what I saw from Bukayo Saka was a guy on a mission, as you alluded to. I think he's just continuing that and that level of form. And I think on Saturday, I mean, he has every trick, right? Because he has the opportunity to just go inside immediately to get past his man. But there was one really good moment, and it's one of his trademarks as well, in which Saliba plays the ball into him, or it was either him or Timber. And then instead of going inside immediately, he allows the ball to roll across his body, then he takes it on his weaker foot, and then he drives past. past, and he did Sessegnon in that way as well. And when you're in opposition fullback, and I appreciate the fact that Sessegnon isn't an out-and-out left-back, but, you know, Saka's done this against the very best. You know, if you've got so many ways in which you can beat your man 1v1, it just becomes so difficult to defend against. And Saka was just simply using that intelligence, that IQ that he has, for me, is of an elite standard to get past his man. And then his efficiency in his final action is ridiculous. That's what sets him apart to all the other wings. You know, I'm not going to compare him directly because he's our player, of course, but like Noni Madueke, there's so much to like. But the biggest frustration with Madueke that we saw at Chelsea, and even at spells at Arsenal so far, in which it's that final touch, that final pass, that final shot on goal or cross that can at times it can leave much to be desired, whereas Saka is efficiency personified. And he was my man of the match, hands down. He was fantastic. And, you know, I think he rightfully got his plaudits. The other player that I wanted to bring you on, and I know you wanted to talk about him before we went on air, was Leandro Trossard, who, again, as many people would go, they would put that meme on that meme on X where it's like, he's done it again. He's done it again. Leandro Trossard. Talk to me.
Mate, £26 million. I don't know what his contract extension probably put him on, but probably something like 120K a week now. Before it was about 90. We're looking at a player who, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms, I think he's almost top 5 players since Mikel has come in, period, in terms of goals. Including like the Aubameyangs and the Lacazettes that have been in. Like since Mikel has come in, he's up there, something like top 5 for total goal score. Currently, the percentage of his goals, which I've said as a point before, he is, along with Martinelli and Saka, the top 3 of those players for the total goals scored, the percent of those goals that contribute to goals that have changed a game state from either a drawing situation or a losing situation to winning us points. Top 3. And he's done it again in a very important match. And he is somebody that I think definitely divides opinion because he's not perfect. But I'll tell you something. He is one of the most clutch players and an example of a senior player that steps up, something that I just don't believe we have had many examples of in Arsenal's history for the last 10 years. Right? Like that idea of seniors actually stepping up is something that's quite significant. And Trossard is somebody that regularly does it. I mean, there's definitely an argument to say that the amount of times that he's started games versus when he's come on as a sub and the impact that has had. But regardless, I don't remember a time that we had such a successful 12th man. Like I'm even going back to like 2013, 2014 days. We didn't really have somebody that was just that consistent, that almost that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer role that, you know, that super sub, that's somebody that you can guarantee clutch moments that will come in having not played a lot, but still have big moments. Yeah. And I mean, he's done it consistently. And this is a guy that, again, I have to say, was killing it at Brighton. And the step up to Arsenal's not guaranteed. Like somebody that kills it in the league has not always been able to translate that to a big team, but it's been seamless. Like if you look at his actual record, ignore what you see in terms of some of the passes completed, some of the moments that he might frustrate you on, which I understand. But as far as efficiency goes and a mentality to win, I actually get it. I look at him and, you know, it's funny. He's always over celebrating every single goal. This guy competes for every blade of grass. And maybe that results in terms of an attitude when it doesn't go his way and he's not playing and he's a bit of a sulk. He's a very competitive person. Yeah. You can see that. But I just think the way that he's been able to consistently provide for us, it's worth its weight in gold. I mean, you know, in terms of having a reliable second goal scorer with experience that gets the job done most times and is so effective with his output. It's not like output where it's the third goal after winning 2-0. He's not just, you know, adding goals for the sake of it. They're game-changing goals. They're significant goals. Again, he's top 3 in the squad for the percentage of his goals resulting in a big game state change from either a loss or a draw. That's significant. It's winning us points. So what did you make of the Trossard goal in general and maybe Trossard's career? Because I don't think it was actually even a brilliant performance. It was just, again, a goal. And I'm looking back and I'm like, holy shit, how many goals is that? How many times has he been able to do this? Yeah. And it's like are we giving him the praise that he deserves for being one of our most impactful goal scorers?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and I think we can look at Trossard, then we'll move into the Atletico Madrid game. But just to add some context to what you alluded to in terms of his output and his efficiency, so Leandro Trossard, and this is as per FBref.com, since he's joined the club, he has featured in 5,500 minutes, and he has 22 goals and 19 assists to his name, which equates to a goal contribution every 134 minutes on average, and that's a £27 million purchase. For me, it's quite ironic because this season, Trossard, I don't think has been as efficient as what he tends to be. He's missed some big moments. He missed the opportunity against Newcastle. I thought he should have also scored at least one against Olympiacos as well. Obviously came on and scored against Port Vale to completely put that game to bed. But I feel like his performances this season have been really encouraging. But against Fulham, I kind of lean into your thinking and how you assessed his game, which I didn't think Trossard was particularly great. And in fact, I was quite frustrated with a lot of the things he was doing in the first half. Yeah. But then he does what we know he's capable of doing time and time again. And, we can look at it being, he's just, he's found himself in a situation in which he's at the right place at the right time. But how many times do we say that about Trossard?
Some luck at that point.
And exactly, and that's what Mikel mentioned post-match. He talked about Trossard in terms of his intuitiveness and his ability to pick up promising areas in the box. That's his bread and butter. And it's a set-piece goal again from Arsenal. And, it's like... And just to quickly close on this, and I can get your thoughts on the set-piece as well, it's like set-pieces are an incredibly sustainable way of scoring goals. And the reason why I say that, I said it many times, is if you've got top set piece takers and you've got dominant players in the box who can meet these crosses, you've got a top coach as well, all of that together is a ridiculous element for the opposition to deal with. And I thought Fulham dealt with them quite well. But all it takes is one moment, and that actually, ironically, I didn't even think Saka's delivery were on point for most of the game. And I think he mentioned it as well in an interview that he did with Sky afterwards. It was the first real threatening ball that he put in, and it ends up being key in terms of deciding the outcome. But the set pieces in which Arsenal statistically, they dominate territory. You can see that from field tilt. Field tilt measures the number of touches and passes that you have in the opposition's third. Arsenal consistently dominating these metrics this season, last season, the season before. What that means is the probability of you getting a lot of corners are extremely high. So if you're getting a lot of corners, you absolutely do need to maximise them. And that's exactly what we're doing. And it's a very sustainable way of scoring because we are talking about set pieces. Not just this season, we're talking about them last season. We're talking about them the season before that. We're talking about them the season before that as well.
You can't argue with what Arsenal's output has been. They've proven it to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And, like you said, we don't get credit for our delivery ever. Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka have world-class elite delivery from dead ball situations. And, of course, everybody knows... how dominant we are in the box in terms of some of our players. And, it's that kind of stick that they like to beat us with, that we have a basketball team and not a football team. But at the same token, it's up to everybody else to decide if they want to put in the effort to sit there, maximize their margins. It's not my fault. I'm not going to apologize for studying harder than the next student at the test. Why am I going to do so? What? I should apologize to be more studious than you, is what you're saying. I should take it as an insult that I've put more effort into an area you haven't. That's what it comes down to. And the funny thing is, mate, like the shift is changing, and it's because people are looking at Arsenal as having a really good chance of winning. And what does Carragher do the first minute? He goes, "Oh yes, Liverpool have lost on set pieces again, and the likes of Arsenal have really been proficient at that." I'm like, hold on, you melt. You've been criticizing that for the last 2 years. Now that you see it's potentially winning, now you're on board about recognizing its importance. It's just, it is
Get
something
him, George. Get him.
Oh my God. I can't do this with these media narratives, because you know what? We should be proud of our team, because it's not just that. I led, by the way, with the creativity point and not the set piece point, because it's true. We have just as much XG as Liverpool and are only 0.8 off of City. So don't even talk to me how it's just a matter of, okay, well, George, I get it. We're great on set pieces. But if that's the only thing we're great at, I go, no.
Yeah.
We're great at them in addition to other things.
Yeah.
So let's not get it twisted. I mean, I think our creativity this season has been brilliant, and the way that we dominate those set pieces is top. And it comes from, like you said, it's a collective effort. It's not just brilliant coaching routine. It's not just having big bodies as a receivers. It's also the world-class delivery from set ball situations that have been going on for 18 months. And Declan Rice wasn't a corner kick taker from West Ham.
Yeah.
That was something he did at Arsenal. So when you sit there and you talk about, oh, it's just given. No. They put effort on that. Saka has always been brilliant with his technique. I'm not going to sit there and say he wasn't. He has. But Declan, that is new. What he did against Madrid and at set pieces is new.
That's a really good point, because Declan Rice, he wasn't taking corners.
He wasn't.
So they've looked at his ball striking and they felt, well, he's fantastic in that regard. We can now harness that in a different context, in a different environment. So I think that kind of puts the Fulham game to bed, really. A really good performance, in my opinion, a really good result. And yes, the game was dictated by a set piece, but I felt our play, our performance in open play as well was really strong, especially in the second half, and some of the solutions that we found. And speaking of solutions, we now have, right, George, the game in which is branded all sorts of terms: Simeone versus Arteta, anti-football, that rhetoric, and we have that today. We obviously are releasing this main pod on a Tuesday, match day, big game against Atletico Madrid. Maybe we can't go too much into this because, both me and you, we haven't watched Atletico Madrid this season, but I think we kind of know what we're going to get from Diego Simeone really in a big game. Tell me, your thoughts on the lineup that you feel we should look to play, the danger men from Atletico Madrid as well, and what you're kind of expecting. Just walk me through that.
I would like to see some rotation in certain things. It was so beautiful to see two fullbacks that we haven't seen all season, in Pierre Hincapié and Ben White in training. I'd like to see a bit of that. I don't know if I need both of them, but I would like to see a bit of that. And, I would like to see as well us kind of make a statement, because Madrid and Simeone are a team that you make a statement against. And, I think a big reason for why our Champions League campaign was actually fairly good was the PSG result that we got early on in qualifying, which woke up the world to our quality. I actually think the reason people took Arsenal seriously in Europe, by the way, was from that group stage game against PSG, even though I felt that we had more complete performances otherwise in the group stage, but it was just that result. And when you face a team like Madrid, it's a way to put a marker. And I'm really aware of what momentum does, because, you take these games and then the next important games are back in February. So when you have a look at the most important Champions League games, for me, it's about getting those big scalps on big names early to create that fear factor. And I'm looking at, Simeone, and this guy is a serial winner. Probably one of the coaches I admire the most, if I'm being honest with you, in the last 2 decades, really. I look at best managers and I put Simeone up there with top 5 for me. I mean, this guy and his love for Madrid.
Just to add on that, George, sorry to butt in, but I mean, when they won La Liga against that Barcelona team, against that Real Madrid team, on a budget that didn't match the two teams that they were competing against.
Yeah.
That was a ridiculous achievement. And he's being competitive.
Yeah.
And teams do fear Simeone in the big games. How many times? I remember when we were sitting here, when we were thinking about what teams we don't want to draw in the Champions League. We spoke about Atletico Madrid because we know what it's like against that manager. But yeah.
No, and he just knows how to win. And I mean, if anything, like you said, ironically, a little mini Arteta in terms of a lot of the philosophies. And so Mikel will be acutely aware of what that does. I mean, for goodness sakes, by the way, we got Carlos Cuesta from Atletico Madrid as well, who had a trial out there as a coach. And it was, this is a team.
Miguel Molina and Carlos Cuesta I've learned under Diego Simeone.
Exactly. So I think it's a coaching staff that we will know well in mentality. And it actually will be an interesting lineup, to be honest with you. Why? Because I think that it's a team that's a little bit under transition, if I must say so myself. They are kind of getting old. Look, you've got Griezmann, you've got, Jimenez, you've got Lenormand, and you've got Koke, who are still playing there, who have been part of that squad forever. But then it's kind of undergoing a transition, because then you've got the Alex Baina, you've got the Alvarez's, you've got
Yeah.
Marcus Llorente. So you've got some of those new players being kind of phased in addition to kind of the old, and it's a very unique group. I look at Alex Baynad as somebody who's got top creativity, and Julian Alvarez, who we know from City's days, is a finisher. He's a roided up Trossard. Right? Like, he's somebody that if you give him space, and even if you don't, from outside the box, he's a major threat. He's somebody that can create moments. I think Julian Alvarez is somebody with phenomenal ball striking that is incredibly efficient with his actions. So he may touch the ball 10 times in the match and he could score a banger from them. So you have to be careful. It's going to be a case from us that I actually don't think that our defensive system is going to matter too much, because they've got that Alvarez maverick factor that you're always going to be on edge. You can't even give him space outside the box, right? But from an Arsenal perspective, I think this is a brilliant way to set a marker in Europe, where this is the best European mid-block that you're going to find in knockout stage football. And to sit there and kind of test our creativity, which we have been able to do against Newcastle, West Ham, and now Fulham. If we can culminate it, mate, on Madrid and Crystal Palace, I'm going to be saying some ridiculous things. And actually, I'll go on record right now and tell you, you make positive results against Madrid. I don't care if it's a 1-0, but results against both Madrid and Palace, that 5-game run, that's what I told you I needed to know if Arsenal will win the league. We do it with wins. Arsenal will win the Premier League and potentially go far in the Champions League for me. That type of reliability in result against that game state is the difference. I look at that PSG match, mate, in the semifinal, and we win that game 9 times out of 10. On the day, it can happen. It can happen to any team. But, mate, I really push back that we got completely dominated in that fixture. That was a leg that we lost, in my opinion. That was on us. The amount of chances we let go from that position. And look, PSG top marks for them doing what they did with Kvaratskhelia in those moments. But it's against these types of teams, the Madrids, that I fear the most as an Arsenal fan. If I was to draw up, I don't fear the teams that come at us as much. I fear these types of teams because historically we've struggled against it. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. I think that we will do well, and I think it's an opportunity to show the world, to lay a marker. Arsenal getting a good win against Madrid strikes fear not just in our league, but around Europe. And already we've seen Madrid players look at Arsenal games this season. So it's already on the minds of people from last year. But I think these are the type of games that you lay markers for.
Absolutely. And as I was looking at my phone, I just saw you kind of, some of your thoughts were linked to this message that we got from the Discord server, one of the questions in terms of like designing a team that is there to beat Arsenal. I mean, when I'm going back to last season, I'm thinking the likes of the Atletico Madrids, the likes of the Newcastles, they're the types of teams that can really put us under trouble, and that's actually from Chase. So, a really good question there, and we'll get to your questions in a second. But yeah, I mean, my final thoughts on Atletico Madrid, and it's a massive game because, as you mentioned, it's like before any football was played this season, you are looking at that Atletico Madrid type of fixture as being one in which Arsenal do struggle against. It's the physicality, the team that can match us in that regard, team that can also defend really well as a unit whilst also being brave on the ball, brave without the ball in terms of wanting to press as well. That's what Atletico Madrid are going to do tomorrow as well. So it's going to be that type of game in which we've seen last season. It's down on us to find solutions. And mate, as you alluded to, it'd be a really good statement if we can go to the Emirates tonight and win it. So yeah, and in terms of the lineup, I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw against Fulham. But I think, just as you mentioned, in the fullback areas, we could potentially see some change there. But outside of that, I mean, I don't think Ben will start. I think Urian Timber will, but I have a feeling maybe we might see Hincapié. At the very least, feature. Yeah,
I would like to see Martinelli. If we do,
yeah,
because I think he's deserved to start.
Yeah.
And for me, if you have Hincapié there, it's the best way to get Martinelli a little bit closer to goal. And I would love to see a Martinelli Gyökeres a little bit more central. And it just sucks because I would have loved a Madueke rotation here a little bit out left with Yuri and Timber. I want us to get to the point that like basically Ben White and Saka are the preferred partnership in a lot of games, and then you've got Timber and a Madueke type that can have a lot of symmetry there. And then likewise on the left, if you've got, Hincapié, you can have like your Ezes, your Trossards, your people that are inside, but even Martinelli, who I want to push a little bit more central. So I think the only one is maybe looking for a Martinelli start is what I would really be after. He's the most right now in the backup players that have shown enough endeavor that I really want to see. Other ones are like rotation. Oh, I want to look at fitness and protect certain things. But I think Martinelli has actually been quite effective with his output recently. He deserves a start.
I agree. I think he's been one of our unsung heroes this season so far. I mean, when we talk about his impact against Man City, we talk about his impact against Atletico Bilbao as well. He scored against Olympiacos as well. So yeah, I think he's having a really underrated season for sure. Score prediction?
I don't think there'll be goals. Actually,
That's why it's called a certain type of derby, and I'm not getting into that. Yeah.
I think it could be a 1-0, I genuinely do, because it's 1-0 or 2-1, and I don't know if we see that many goals. So I think it could be a 1-0 to the Arsenal.
I was literally going to go for that. I think it'll be 1-0. I think it won't be much in between it. I think it's going to be, as it says on the tin, and I think we have to respect that as well. It's going to be a nasty game. But I think we'll pull through, and I think we'll keep the momentum going. And speaking of momentum, you guys in the Discord server have been operating with sufficient momentum in terms of your questions. And like we always say, in terms of priority to questions, you can get that by becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. You can access a free 7-day trial within the link below, within the description. You get a whole range of content. We're going to be looking to get data pods soon. Currently, we've got rewatches. I'll be doing a rewatch a solo rewatch for the Atletico Madrid game, and God, I hope there's some entertainment there for sure. So I'll be doing that. That'll be released later this week. We'll be having youth pods, scouted. If you want to become a director as well, next week we'll be doing our director's phone in as well. George's Tactic Corner. That's another feature of that tier as well. So there's a lot of content on the Cannon Podcast right now, and it's a very good time to join in and be part of the fun. So let's go to the Discord. And this was a question from Cole, and I think he asked this question last week, actually. He asks, are there any players in the squad that you think could genuinely play a different position to a high level, e.g. Saliba as a striker? I've got mine. Guess what I'm going to say, George?
For you? Oh my God.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. We saw something against Fulham in the first half. A very big moment. A disallowed goal.
Oh, do you think Calafiori is like a left central midfielder?
Or a striker. I think he could do it. I genuinely think he could do it. I think in terms of like giving him the moments to score goals, I think he could do that. I genuinely do. That's like my hipster take.
He could have a Paqueta transition.
Yeah,
Calafiori. He's really strange in terms of, not just his finishing efficiency is insane, isn't it? I would love to see, as far as transition goes, I've said a lot of mine. Look, I would love to have Ethan at false 9. It's something that I've talked about. Yeah, and I'd love to see that like actually come into play. Yeah. I've seen my Eze at right center mid, so that was something that I really wanted earlier this season. So I've got that, but I would love to see Ethan as a false 9 in certain moments. The way that his finishing mechanics are, I just think he could pop in that role. Like we talked about Julian Alvarez, I think Ethan can have a similar type of ability to affect output in central areas.
Crazy.
Especially in zone 14. He's top. Yeah.
Do you have a question for me, Mike?
I do. I'm going to combine two from basically Josh Miller and Mark Tremaine. Thank you guys so much for your questions, but they have both done paragraphs, so I'm going to try to be concise and succinct. They basically boil down to that some rivals think we can only score from set pieces. Not only, but rely on them, rather. And are we too boring? I think that we're trying to create, but if essentially... Some people say that we force teams into low blocks. Do you feel that us forcing teams into low blocks is a voluntary mechanism or involuntary? So, for example, the Manchester City match, I think, is a beautiful example of the type of question he's asking. I know there was some people thinking that was City doing it, or was it Arsenal pushing? So that's one question. And then the second question is, if we're going to start scoring from open play, and Josh, I think you'll like the creative analysis that we did earlier, because we talked about how actually we are scoring and people are just kind of ignoring it. We have the same XG as Liverpool and only 0.8 behind City. But if we are to score from open play, what mechanism do you think we can exploit better? So, two-part question. Do you think us pushing people back into a low block is voluntary or involuntary? And if we are going to score from open play more, what's a pattern of play that you feel that we could be doing that, whether through its right-hand side combinations, arriving from the box? What's a mechanism you think we can exploit better?
Yeah, I mean, to go to the first part of the question in terms of like, you know, are Arsenal forcing teams back? There's always an element of that. I think, you know, the Man City games are a really good example of it for sure, in terms of, you know, Man City recognising that they couldn't physically match Arsenal in that game in the second half, and they decided they felt the most comfortable way of being able to achieve the desired outcome was to drop their lines deeper and play a game in which we've not seen Man City do under Pep Guardiola for prolonged periods. I'd say if you're adopting that mindset from the 60th minute and onwards, that is something that is not prevalent amongst Man City under that coach. But equally, I think, you know, Mikel said it post-match. I can't remember which game it was, but he said, you know, with the way that teams play, and statistically, if you look at Mark stats, teams drop their lines deeper versus Arsenal than any other team in the Premier League, and that was something that was present last season as well. The only team in which had faced a deeper defensive line was Bayern Munich. That was the only team in Europe, you know, and that for me makes sense. So that is one of the big reasons why set pieces do become a lot more important, because it becomes harder breaking down a block in which teams are defending really well and are well organised. And Mikel said, like, if teams are coming to press Arsenal and they're looking to assert their dominance and assert their way of playing on us, we'll score more open play goals, you know. But in fact, I think we are looking good from open play anyway. I mean, against Fulham, I can name you a number of situations in which I felt we left goals on the pitch. You know, we're looking at that Gyökeres at a couple of moments, Martinelli with a rebound as well. There were a few moments in which Saka does brilliantly and the pass is on point. And then the final action at times with Timber, I felt was very good defensively, but I felt his on-the-ball play was a little bit off in the final third. You know, these are clear opportunities in open play that we are squandering. So I'm not worried about Arsenal in that regard. And in terms of the boring tag, I think when you score goals from set pieces and that becomes the narrative, automatically I think people then start to believe that story.
And Calafiori disallowed goal is sweeping.
We're talking about margins there, right? You know, if that goal, if he's not offside, we're talking about a brilliant sequence which Arsenal recognise the triggers. They go long, they switch it. Trossard first time, Calafiori, boom, it's a goal. You know, a lot of it is outcome driven. What about Newcastle? How many times did we find inroads against Newcastle at St James's Park in which we left goals on the pitch in open play? How many times? It was very often. You know, look at our opening goal against West Ham. It's from open play. Do you know what I mean? So I personally wouldn't put too much focus on it. And in terms of the second part of that question, I mean, this is interesting because obviously we've got a different centre forward up top in terms of we're playing slightly different in terms of how we're adapting more to Gyökeres. Whereas before, I would say you're looking at that half-space cross immediately as being a clear mechanism of chance creation that we have leaned towards many times. Don't think we've actually been hitting that delivery as often since Gyökeres has been starting games. You know, so we're looking to try and get Gyökeres more 1v1 against on the centre backs. Like what we were doing against Fulham is we were looking for certain triggers in which Fulham were marking certain plays inside their block, and then we could hit the early ball in behind for Gyökeres to latch onto. And there were a couple of moments in which, you know, I think he should do a little bit better in that final moment. So I think, you know, we're finding different ways, but I think it is about adapting right now to who we have.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. There's not much to add there. I actually think the only thing I'll say is that maybe our cutbacks might return more with your more Havertz type of center forward play. And I think that we've actually seen a lot of new style of play and creative inroads this season and early because of Gyökeres in terms of who we're playing up top. I think we might see a little bit more right-hand side combinations when we see the return of our injured players a bit more. Is probably the only thing I'll say. And like the cut back to the top of the box being more accurate is something we might add with those players back because it suits them a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to the Discord server and from Carillion Cat. That's new one. I've not seen that one before, but thank you so much. And I apologise if I've butchered the pronunciation, because that is a tendency of mine at times. So he asks, do any of you, he asks, or her, do any of you think we will drop out of first place in the league provided we have injury luck on our side? I don't. I generally don't think we will drop out of first place if we are remaining good health from an injury standpoint. Like, I genuinely don't think we will, because it's then a case of us dropping points and then our rivals then latching on to those moments. So
my biggest thing, I said it earlier in the pod, was this game run. I've said it for so many pods. So I want Madrid and Palace. And again, I'll start saying some pretty crazy things if I get those, and I'll have some evidence for it. I'll say why, because actually we've been able to increase our creativity against bogey teams and win. So it's not just a point tally. We're doing it through improved performances against them. So it's pretty significant and sustainable.
Brilliant. Let's do one more question each, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'll do one from Abdulaziz Al-Saad on the Patreon. Thank you for your question. Do you think that London clubs, and specifically Arsenal, have a more difficult task of winning the Premier League because of the amount of London derbies, while teams from other cities don't have the same challenge? I've never heard that question before.
That's a great question. I mean, back in a couple of years ago, our London derby record was insane. It was brilliant.
It was.
We were fantastic.
I mean, it's brilliant for us. But I don't know. It kind of... Okay, like Liverpool and United, as far as historically go, is there a point to be made that you have so many emotional neighborhood matches that are like consistent? Like, do they matter? Like, I mean, you could probably help me more than anything.
It does matter, George. So I've been going to Arsenal for a very long time, right? So I've been to a lot of London derbies. There's a different edge to it. Even when we played against West Ham, it's just a different feeling when you're within close proximity to each of these clubs, and therefore you're close to the other fans as well. I really do believe that this is a thing. That's a really good question. And there's so many London derbies. You've got Palace,
so many.
West Ham, then you're talking about Chelsea, Fulham,
Watford, back in other
back
things.
In the day. Yeah, there's lots of clubs there. So I think that's a good point. So brilliant question. Brilliant. So I do think there's something there. I can't quantify it, but me neither. When I go into London derbies, there is a little bit of a different feeling in terms of the hostility of the. It's that emotionality. People are more up for it, so there's a little bit more back up to it. I think, like, I don't know. I mean, what would be the North? I mean, you're going to help me with my geography better. Yeah, well,
you
got like
Liverpool,
Burnley. Burnley will be close to the likes of Manchester United, and
sure.
Yeah, so
Newcastle.
Newcastle's in the world of its own. You got to go to the heavens there.
So how many would you say? Let's say on average in the season that are in the North. Let's call it.
I mean, I'm looking at like close proximity. I'd categorize like Liverpool, Man United through the history of those clubs is a thing anyway, right?
It's huge.
There's two. Yeah. But you got like Burnley there. Burnley's another one. But then when you go like really north, you're talking about like Newcastle. You're talking about Sunderland. That's a big derby. The Tyneside derby. But the cluster of games in terms of like competitiveness with these individual derbies that are happening, it's all in London. Like that's where the action is in terms of like hostility towards other fans and stuff. And I do see it. Not hostility in terms of like violence, but in terms of like their bragging rights.
Teams, I mean, teams are up for it. Yeah,
look at West Ham and how they operate on social media and some of the big accounts when we play them.
Yeah, completely agree.
So I think there's something there. Final question, and we will do this quite quickly because I know, George, you need to get off soon. So Ivan Smith. What a legend on the Discord. Why do you think Gyökeres has had something of a slow start, in his opinion, to his time at Arsenal so far? 3 goals.
Give me a Gyökeres question before I leave.
Absolutely, for you, my friend. 3 goals in 8 league games isn't bad, but I was hoping for a bit more on the Fulham game. He felt was a relatively quiet one from him. Are we not playing to his strengths enough, or is he just not doing enough when the chances arise?
Complete opposite to me. I'm tired of being nice in it. Okay, there was definitely an argument in the first couple games that Arsenal were learning to play with Gyökeres. Yeah. As it's gone on, you can't make that argument for me. And when you talk about 3 goals in 8 games, 2 of which from Leeds, don't want to be rude, it is a case of him having to do more. Yeah. I'm not going to be one to run away right now. It's I don't want to kill him, but unfortunately, a lot of the things that I raised as constructive concerns are things that I'm seeing. It's the movement in the box of him being reactive and not proactive. That's the main thing that's really frustrated me. I think the back to goal stuff is something that me and you have talked about at length, and I've detailed why. I think shoulder to shoulder is very different from back to goal.
It's the box thing for me, George, that I didn't see as much. I mean, again, I watched a fair few. I didn't catch on to it.
That was my frustration, my fear, and that will maintain to be my frustration. I actually don't, because again, me critiquing Gyökeres to be something else is not fair. Like, I'm not going to critique Odegaard to be this transition runner when he can't do it. Same thing where, to me, I feel like the back to goal stuff, he'll never be Giroud.
Yeah.
But, he can tweak things. The box thing, though, he has good movement. He objectively has good movement in the channels. That's something that he should be able to critique. Being proactive, being on your toes, being a bit better in your movement in the box. If you take a long time to shoot, I don't care as long as your movement's good so that you can affect and push the line a bit more. And he can do better in terms of some of his movement in the box. He's a little bit static for me in terms of when the block's settled and it's not open space. Not only is his movement poor, but I think he's just static in the zone. He's got to be a bit more proactive in the types of runs that he makes to stretch lines. But other than that, again, I think a lot of this Gyökeres narrative is going to be this thing where people expected one thing and then they were disappointed in the play of another. And I just think he'll benefit from Havertz coming in. Like, I don't know what you think, mate. Like, you're going to help me a bit more because I feel like we've talked so much about the Gyökeres differences. But like for you, what point would you start to say, okay, he has to do better?
No.
And are you here now?
No. I mean, okay, right. So, and we can kind of end it on here, right? So I do believe, right? And it was Alan Shearer who mentioned it on Match of the Day. And I agree with what he was saying in terms of Gyökeres. And we said it about, in terms of behaviours of our centre forwards and Jesus and Havertz, they're different to each other in terms of the bias that they prefer in terms of what areas of the pitch that they predominantly look to operate in. Gyökeres is a lot more on the last line, right? So immediately we are looking to tailor ourselves more towards his way of playing. And I do think that the runs that he is making, the runs, right, is opening up space. When we're talking about occupying centre-backs, that's a different conversation. In terms of the runs that he is making, yes, he is certainly giving us space, and that is helping others to some degree, right? But I can appreciate that, I recognise that, I see that, but I can still demand more. That is where I stand right now. I'm looking at Gyökeres and I'm thinking, he needs to be better back to goal. I know it's not something that has been his forte, right? But I need more, mate. I do need more. It's getting a little bit frustrating because, I know that he is going to get better. I know that Kai Havertz, coming back will certainly benefit him. But I don't think there's anything wrong with demanding more. He just needs to do better in these scenarios. I mean, I'm seeing a long ball hit towards him and he's up against Ryan Sessegnon and he's not pinned him.
He's got to do better.
I'm looking at that. And I kept the same energy when Kai Havertz had that performance against Archie Gray in which, he didn't pin him at all. I'm like, I want to see more in those scenarios. So I totally acknowledge there are certain things that he's doing that is benefiting the team, but equally we can certainly demand a bit more in specific scenarios. I actually don't critique him for those two shots, George. Yes, we can nitpick and say like, maybe if he taken an extra touch in that first situation. Me neither. But I'm like, when I saw that, I thought, yes, that's good. I don't mind you missing chances. I don't care. Like, I agree. To a certain extent, obviously. It's the other facets of the game which I do want to see more of. And I do think we are tailoring our play more towards him. And the big one here is the fact that Leandro Trossard is consistently starting week in, week out. That, for me, is a big decision as to why.
Huge decision. Especially with Martinelli doing well.
Exactly. And it's not like Martinelli and Gyökeres can't coexist together. They absolutely can. But I think we're putting more emphasis on getting Gyökeres shoulder to shoulder against one of the centre-backs and getting him in behind. So we are doing our bit in terms of playing to his strengths. Now I just want to see a little bit more from him personally. That's where I stand on it.
I completely agree. And the only thing I'll end on is that we've got a squad now that, by the way, it's not just a Gyökeres, but when we're talking about people that could be underperforming, we've now got a squad that people will have competitiveness. And I just don't think that we'll have that same insistence to play through bad form thing anymore. And actually, there shouldn't be that excuse. So there should be a case of like, okay, after 5 or 6 games, and if we've got the players fit, you're going to going to be dropped, and you're going to have to earn your place back a bit, and that's okay. I don't use it to say, oh, I'm right at this point. It's more of a case of, okay, he's now our player. There's no point in constantly doing it. But when we look at it, it's constructive criticism, and it's about Mikel trying to find the best solution for getting everybody to play. And I actually think that a timeout and a swap where Havertz starts a couple games and then Gyökeres comes in as a finisher to get those moments, he'll start to gain confidence himself. And confidence is a big thing. So for me, I never put somebody in the cold. I always think you need to rest, hydrate, and come back. That's my mentality. All right, you're going to be fine. I don't have to worry about it with this squad.
Brilliant. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, George, for tuning in with me as a pair together on this Tuesday. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this latest main podcast. And like I said, if you wanted to become a Patreon or YouTube member, you can do so by accessing the free 7-day trial within the link below. But no, it's been a really good one. And hopefully we continue to build that momentum with Atletico Madrid tonight. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thank you all for tuning in. And last but not least, thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Inspiration.